One's career kit to supercharge your job search. All right, Dave, take it away.
Awesome. I'm just gonna share my screen. All right. So I'm here to talk about navigating the job market and giving you guys an inside view. I want this to be more of a kind of a dialogue because I think I've done this many times where the best part is really as I present at the end, like, people have a lot of questions. So as I'm going through, gather your questions, and at the end we'll have a dialogue about it because I think a lot of people have many questions that we can dive a little bit deeper into. So a little bit about my journey, to set the stage. Once I finished business school, I started working in sales. As you can see from my journey trajectory, not very common, right? I jumped around multiple different roles. But basically, one thing that is a common thread across all of these companies is really the human capital aspect of it. Even when I was at the venture capital side at Class Capital, one of the biggest challenges and hurdles that we had was really finding key talent within the portfolio companies that we've invested in. And here, I just did a little arrow for this little yellow icon here. And the reason because that company is called Ezra. And in 2018, that's where I met my co-founder, Arsham. And I joined as employee number one. It was an early stage startup based in New York, doing AI radiology screening. I built the team from the ground up. That's where I found my co-founder, brought him over. He joined as one of the founding engineers. He ended up becoming head of machine learning. We stayed in touch. And then a few years later, we built and started Ribbon. So let's jump into the state of the market and what's happening in the market currently. So it's not great, and we know that from last year. Uh, there's a lot of layoffs, and it's probably one of the worst years that we've had. Even if you think about like the Great Recession in 2008, it was actually worse than that, and especially in the tech sector. So usually you see right in the start of the year, it gets typically bad up front because everybody's trying to position themselves for the rest of the year, and you can see that trail off. And that's a very common kind of pattern. It happens all the time. So don't be too alarmed when you see a lot of like headlines of layoffs happening in January, February, March. Companies are positioning themselves. I know even for us, we're a really small company. We don't have, you know, the size of like Apple or any of the big companies, but we still have those conversations with our finance team or our board and our investors as well. So I think that's a really common thing that most people don't understand is that you usually plan the layoffs prior to that and you execute them in typically the first half or first quarter of the year. So what does 2024 look like? Well, again, same pattern. It started off with quite a bit of layoffs, not as bad as what we saw last year. So very optimistic. Things are starting to shift and change, but we still saw 30,000, jobs that were laid off in January and February so far. So we're optimistic to see that pattern is going to continue to get better over the years, over the course of this year, I should say. So just anticipate that as the coming months are going to come up, I think the numbers are going to get better and better. So what are the reasons for the layoffs and what's happening? Well, first, there is a pre-pandemic hiring binge that occurred. People got really crazy excited. Interest rates were low. Companies had access to capital, and so they went on this. We call it the talent arms race in tech, and so everybody was trying to scoop up top talent, even if they didn't had a need for that individual. The thinking was if we can pick up that individual onto our team, that means our competitors doesn't have that individual on their team, which became a problem because people were over hiring for things that they didn't need. One of the big jokes that we had with one of my friends at Shopify is that on one of his team, he had 10 people managing one button. Like it just doesn't make sense, and nobody was really um had a full schedule, or had like a full workload. And then the other thing is we had really high inflation, so that's another reason for the layoffs. That's making this happen. And then the last one is just really weak consumer demand numbers. And what that did to the market is that it shifted the market from being a candidate-driven market, to an employer-driven market. And I'll quickly explain what those two things mean. Candidate-driven market is where you as a candidate have your choice, and you saw that quite a bit, prior to 2022. You would have 24-hour offers that occurred after one or two interviews. Really quickly, offer came to you, and the offer would be, above market, just to lock you in so that you don't go off to somewhere else. Well, that's changed quite a bit, because of all the layoffs. So now it's becoming more of a employer-driven market, and we're seeing that. From a personal anecdote, we hired for our team, and I noticed an influx of applicants, and that I can pick from, that I haven't seen in years. The other thing that we saw that really made that a big challenge is the LinkedIn Easy Apply button. Is one of the best and worst thing that LinkedIn ever created. It was the best because it's super easy. Anybody can apply. You can apply to hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs relatively quickly. It was the worst because now people that, there's no barrier for you to apply, and therefore people are applying to so many different types of jobs just to see what's stuck, which caused a lot of applications for all these different types of roles that hiring managers were posting. And so we saw 4 times more applications than ever before, and that number really rang true for even our team. When we were hiring, I saw 4 times more applicants, if not 5 times more applicants for jobs, and our brand is even as big as the bigger companies, and so application really flooded the market. So let's run through the numbers. So right now, as it stands, it looks like 90 to 180 days to land a job, and that's an average. These are average numbers, by the way. So we're looking at what, 3 to 6 months to land a job. So it is a long game. So get mentally prepared that it's going to take time. It is a long game, and you should start as soon as possible. Don't delay. Just get into the market as soon as you can. A couple of other interesting stat. Less than 10%. You will get an interview from a single application, which tells us that you need to apply to a lot of applications, but be as customizable as possible to those applications so that you can stand out. We're seeing now, 10 to 20 applications equals one job, and that's a really standard number we're seeing these days. Another thing I want to touch on that caused another piece of the problem from the easy apply, the number of applicants that are flooding the market is that it created a hiring gap. And so you would think that because there's so many more applicants, it is employer driven, that the employers have it really good. Well, it's not necessarily the case. They have a lot more applicants, but they're also having a hard time filling those roles. 77% of those employers from this worldwide survey said that they have a really hard time filling those roles. And we're seeing these numbers. You can see these numbers change over a period of time. From 2014, it was 35%. So it was really good to be able to quickly find an individual, and it wasn't too bad up until the pandemic, and then now it's pretty high to be able to find that talent to fill that role. And it's not just in tech. We're seeing that across all of the different industries as well. So you look at these numbers; these are all historical high numbers across the board, reported by Fortune 500, Dow companies, Nasdaq companies, and they're in the 70 percentile, so quite high. So now how do you make yourself more marketable, right? There's so many applications that are flooding the market. You're one of, hundreds of other applicants, if not thousands of applications that are applying for a particular job. There's a few things I want to highlight that I think will make yourself more marketable. The first one is level up your skills. Um, the fact that you guys are at 4Geeks and at the coding school, it's great. Like, it means that you are trying to improve on your current skills or learning a new skill. So do that, right? Go to coding school, learn new skills outside of what you've learned at at another institution. Now there's so much online courses you can have access to. Look at Coursera, Udemy. There's so many online courses, so tap into that as well. The last two I would say is really interesting for me, and I give this as a recommendation to people that I mentor all the time, and I'll share with you guys. The first one is create personal projects, and then interact with the communities. There's lots of communities out there that you can get people to comment, like, share what you're doing, but also like give you tips on how to improve on a particular skill project that you worked on. And you can build that community and get some really honest feedback from those individuals. And then the other one is find a mentor. And I put mentor in quotations because it's really finding like a group of people. So it's not like a traditional mentor in that sense. If you could find somebody with years of experience that would mentor you, that's amazing. That's typically pretty hard because of time constraints and things like that. And also, if you find that an individual as a mentor, you also want to make sure, and this is a really important tip, don't find a mentor that has been so far away from the market. Just because that person's successful and they have like 20 years of experience is not that relatable for you anymore. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. You can find that person as a mentor, just have like a general conversation about their career path and things like that. But like, their advice is going to be totally outdated. It wouldn't just apply. And so when I say find a mentor in quotations, I mean find a group of individuals that have gone through your journey, a few years out, or a group of peers, and share stories, share like ideas, things that you can do to improve and help yourself improve your chances of improving your skills and things like that. The other thing I would say, and this is, there's a laundry list of things that employers are looking for, but, in talking to my group of other founders and leaders that are hiring, and also from our perspective as well, I would say I would boil it down to like really four things that I'm seeing that is very common these days. The first one is just communication. So understanding how to communicate complex problems is really, really important. That's probably one of the most important things I look for in an interview. My team and my co-founder and others is, how do you explain these things? Because a lot of times we're not all in the same room anymore. We're working remote, so we're hiring people from all across the world. So communication is really key. You have to be able to explain very articulately and very clearly the problem set, the solution, what are we going to do to accomplish it. So many times people miscommunicate, and that causes a lot of friction and misunderstanding and delays and things like that. So communication is right there at the top of my list. The other thing I look for a lot when I interview is adaptability. So like, demonstrate that you are adaptable to change. Things are moving so rapidly these days that you need to be able to adapt and change, and things that you've learned, you need to adjust to that as well, to the time. So even things that you learned a year ago probably slightly changed now when you actually go into the workforce. The third one is being a really creative problem solver. When you're interviewing, demonstrate that. We ask a lot of questions about problem solving. A lot of times what will happen is we will ask questions around a problem that we're thinking of deeply as a founder or a leader, and a problem that we're seeing. We want to see not the solution itself, but like, how do you break this problem into smaller, more manageable pieces, and how do you execute, and how are you going to attack the problem itself? And walk me through your thinking, right? And it goes back to communication. Walk me through your thinking. And then the last one I already mentioned is continuous learning. Demonstrate to me that you're going to be trying to learn something new all the time, whether it's with your peers, whether it's something online. We want you to bring fresh ideas to the table. So how do you stand out? The number one thing that I'm starting to see, and I encourage people to do it, is uh, if you're an introvert, unfortunately, you have to be an extrovert, right? Like, start building a personal brand, build an online presence. So that's one way of standing out. And when I say online presence, I mean, there's LinkedIn, there's so many different platforms where you can demonstrate your experience and your skill. GitHub, that you can connect with other people in the community. Highlight your achievements and your projects, things that you've done. It doesn't have to be at a company. It could be things that you're passionate about, that you've built, like a website, or a chatbot, or whatever else that you're trying to work on and play around with. Those things really stand out to a hiring manager. And so highlight those things. And then the last one is just network, and network. You have to really get out there and network as much as you can. And that's how you really build relationships with hiring managers, or somebody that can connect you with those people. So let's go through and show you what Ribbon has built with everything in mind. So really, Ribbon is an AI powered platform, and we've created a bunch of tools for the modern job seeker. So we created this thing called Career Kit, and a Career Kit includes things like using AI to improve on your resume, be able to allow you to apply across multiple different platforms or job boards really easily, helps you prepare and simulate interviews itself, and then eventually creates offer, takes the information from an offer, and then gives you feedback in terms of where you stand within the market, but also how to renegotiate that as well. Let's start with the first one. Within our Career Kit on our platform, we have a tool called Resume Plus. And so you upload your resume, and it tells you with AI things that you should change and improve on your resume. So that's kind of the first step as you start searching for a job. It gives you that actionable feedback. It also tells you the why as well. And this is our first version. We're going to continue to improve on it and make it even better. And the idea behind this is that eventually we want to use AI to take your information and be able to craft a different variation of your resume. So you can say, I want to have this resume that's going to be tailored to this audience, and it'll tailor that to for you. So for example, if you're looking to volunteer, it'll tailor a volunteer type of resume. Or if you're looking for an internship, it'll tailor an internship type of resume, full-time job, part-time job, whatever else. So it's gonna be able to tailor that for you. So after the first step of creating your document, the next step is really for you to start searching for a job or applying for jobs. One thing that we heard from a lot of our users is they're applying to hundreds, if not more, jobs. And that goes back to what I was saying. It's taken a long time to apply. It is a numbers game. So people are applying to a lot of different jobs. And so when you're applying to jobs like on LinkedIn, Indeed, Well Found, or ZipRecruiter, or other places, you get great experience within those platforms, but those platforms don't talk to each other. And so we created a Chrome extension that allows you to be able to quickly just view the job, save the job, and apply for the job, and organize that all for you. So now you can go back and track and know what have you applied, what have you viewed. And this is our first version, but the future version of this is going to be really interesting. Is that our AI is going to scan the actual job description itself, highlight what is the key aspect of that job that will increase your chances of landing that job. And then looking at your experience, it will tell you to highlight that experience, whether it's in an email or a cover letter or in your resume. And then it will auto apply for those jobs for you, but in a customizable way. The third one is Interview Plus. And this is where you're lucky enough to get an interview based on your background and your experience. it gives you, it simulates questions for you to prepare for the interview, whether it's behavioral, technical, situational, or general questions. And it'll ask those questions based on your experience, and it'll know you, so it'll ask those questions. We have a magic answer button, which the AI will then craft out what that answer would look like in a paragraph for you. Eventually, you'll be able to highlight, edit, and change that answer up, and you can even create bullet points. And the great thing about this is that those questions will be stored to the jobs that you're applied. So imagine you're applying to hundreds of jobs, you get 25 interviews or 20 interviews. Those interview question prep that you're getting prepared for will live with those job applications. So it makes it really easy to track for you as well. And this is the one I'm really excited about. It's called Chat AI, and I want to do a live demo for the group. So I'm going to stop sharing here and then jump onto our platform to quickly share, and I'll quickly explain what Chat AI is all about. All right. So this is Chat AI. So let's go to a new chat. I'm not sure if you can see. Actually, let me cancel this. All right. So what Chat AI is, it's very similar to ChatGPT, but the big difference is that ChatGPT doesn't really know you or understand you specifically, right? And so what we've built out is a way for you to ask questions related to your job search, your career, and then it'll craft that answer based on what it knows of you. And as you interact and give it more context, it'll be able to then understand you better, and then it'll be able to then suggest things where you can improve. But you can ask any questions, and so I'll love for somebody to type in a question and you love for me to test out our chat. So let's see if we can stump the chat. Anybody have any question that you burning to know? You could type it in, and I'll just copy it and throw it into the chat.
There's a question from earlier in the chat. It says, "What about hackathons?" I'm assuming they mean like, would hackathons be an effective measure as far as like
yeah. I mean, we could create a question around that if you want, but if there's another question, like if somebody wants to know like how do I reach out to a recruiter, or like what's the best message to reach a recruiter, or what's an interview process, like we could try one of those questions, or I can just craft one out if nobody has any.
Well, if you have a perfect example perhaps to show us, that would be ideal.
Yeah, so let's look at this example. So right now these are just suggestions, right? And these rotate. So based on how much usage, these are questions that people have asked. So it just pulls up the most recent questions that a lot of people have asked. So let's look at how to write a message to recruiter. Let's click on it. So as it writes it out, as you can see, it's writing something that's very personal about me, right? It's not just writing a template and then you fill that information. It puts my name down. It also talks about my HR experience. It also talks about my time as the VP at Local Logic. It also talks about me scaling from 30 to 40 employees. It also talks about Series A funding that I helped do. It also talks about my time at Ezra, as I mentioned, Class Capital. So it already crafts out a very personalized message, and then it puts down my contact information already. So that's an example. We can go back and try another example. Let's do. Somebody. So Scott asked, it will shorten if you ask it. Right now, not yet, but it will. You can reprompt it, and it'll be able to. You can like modify. You can say, "Yeah, great, but I need to." So right now, it's you're asking of it, but we're in the works of making more of a two-way conversation with the AI. So AI is going to come back and say, was this good enough? You'll say, yes, this part was great, but this part I need to change. And then it'll recraft another version for you until you're satisfied. Was there another question? Can you ever be too old? Oh yeah, let's do that one. Okay. I like that one. I'm going to copy and paste this one. So the question from Janet was, can I ever be too old to work at my dream job? Let's see. It's an interesting question. Cool. Age should not be a barrier to pursuing your dream job. In many countries, there is anti-discrimination laws that protect you from job seeker, from ageism. That being said, certain industries, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so you get the idea. It's like it takes information, and this is actually a really good example because it takes information from where I am. So for example, like because I'm in Ontario in Canada, there's certain discrimination laws. It actually takes that into account. And we've actually built out the algorithm. We've taken a really long time to be able to bring that context and information to make sure that you're getting the best context possible. So you can even like, I'll give you an example. Let's talk about severance then. Like, how does severance work for me if I get laid off? If it gets context. Cool. Yeah, there you go. Severance is a form of compensation. So it explains a little bit. And it says, since you are located in Toronto, Canada, severance would be typically governed by the Employment Standards Act of Ontario. So that's the law. And then it breaks down what that looks like. And then it tells you the calculation and it tells the additional information and consideration. Again, keep in mind, it's not a lawyer. So like, don't take it as legal advice, but at least it gives you information that typically in this situation, you're going to go to your friend and to ask them, what should I do? Right. So, but I want to really quickly show you guys what this tool can do. And it will get better over time, which is really exciting for us to see. And even better than just giving you answers, is going to go ahead and execute for you. So one thing I want to show to mention is that not only do it tell you a certain answers, but it will also connect you with people within our network as well. So we have over 190,000 users already on the platform. One thing that we're hearing from people is it takes time to like network and connect with certain people, and so eventually we'll work on this in stealth mode, but our AI will become a matchmaker as well. So if you want to collaborate with somebody, you will say, I want to collaborate with so-and-so, and then it'll go ahead and pull those profiles and tell you, like, do you want to connect with this individual? It'll do the awkward outreach or the connection, reach out to the other side on your behalf and say, do you want to connect with so-and-so? If they both do, and it's double opt-in, then it will drop you into a conversation where you could connect with each other. If you don't want to connect with that person, you say no, and that's that. Both sides have to connect, but it will do the heavy lifting so that you're not, on LinkedIn where you're dropped into LinkedIn and now you have to like try to find and connect with the person. This does the matchmaking for you. So let's go. Let me. I'm trying to get back to my presentation. Okay. So we talked about chat AI. Other things are coming soon, exciting. One is called Offer Plus. I think I might briefly mention that. You'll be able to, if you're lucky enough to get an offer in your process, you upload your offer letter. It will tell you where you stand amongst the market, top 10%, bottom 10%, in the middle. It scans the resume and highlights questions that you should ask just to clarify, but also it'll tell you certain things that you should probably renegotiate or ask for more clarity as well. And the last one is called Data Room Plus, and that's where we've heard from so many users. They said, I store my reference letters, I store my all these things everywhere. I would love to be able to store in one place. And then we would create a almost like a DocSend link so that it stores that information. If you are, you get an offer and you're about to get a job, well, you can just send a DocSend link and it'll have all the documents that you need for to be able to send out to the hiring manager so that they could get the background check going or whatever the onboarding would look like. So that's an exciting piece that's coming soon on our side. So follow us on these channels if you want. Love for you guys to follow our development, like, share, comment. I think it just gets more reach for us, and we would totally appreciate that. And we're on LinkedIn quite a bit. So, and we're gonna have some more TikTok that we're gonna get out there. And that's it. Any questions?
If you guys have questions, it will be good to just ask them out loud or post them in the chat, and we can do like a Q&A session.
I think Alberto asked the question, what if I want information based in Mexico? Is that possible? Yes, it is. Our algorithm is getting better right now. From what I believe, it does have information from Mexico, but play around with it. If not, it is coming. But we are tapping to a really large data set of information. ATS scan. So is that the applicant tracking system? Yes, we can talk about ATS scan, but can I get more context? Do you wanna type or you want to speak on it?
Because they're like the first ones that see your application before reaching a human, right?
Yep.
So what would be a good strategy to pass through those scans?
That's what we built in Resume Plus. So when you do your resume, you upload your resume. I didn't do a demo of it because there's a spare of time. But when you upload your resume, it tells you all the keywords that you've used, and it gives you a check mark. And it suggests the ones that you haven't used as keywords that you have as experience, but you should probably add that because it will help allow you to pass through the application scanning that you mentioned.
Do you usually need so let's say that the ATS scan is looking for 10 keywords and your resume has about 8. Will it pass?
It should be. I don't have an answer to that because every ATS scan is different. Every algorithm is different. But if you have enough of those keywords, it should pass. And I've used and I've executed ATS scans on my side when I used to work at different companies, and most of it is just really scanning for a few keywords that they're looking for based on your experience. Obviously, we don't want you to just make up words that don't relate to you whatsoever. But in our Resume Plus, what it does is that it just highlights the keywords that we're seeing from other job applications because our AI scans every single job application that fits into like a certain industry or a certain title. And so we give you a list of like what is the most common ones.
I think I've also heard that sometimes they check whether or not you got a certification. Sometimes they don't want to scan resumes with certifications, and sometimes they do. Is there a way you could tell whether or not you should add it or not before you apply to a certain job?
Well, we don't have that. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a solution around that. It's hard because it's very unique to certain application tracking system. And to be really honest, most companies don't use application tracking unless you're a really large company. So if you're thinking about like the larger companies, because we talked about the number of applicants. Let's say Apple is getting tens of thousands of applicants, if not, same with like Netflix or Amazon. So they have their own proprietary way of scanning that. I don't know how you would combat that. Yeah, you would just have to highlight the most amount of keywords possible for you to pass the initial scanning.
Okay, so big companies are more likely to use those scans than a smaller company and startups and unicorns and such.
100%. I would say only probably 20% will use that type of technology. It's very expensive to execute, use, and so there's only a few of those providers that use it, and the number of seats that they use it only makes sense for larger companies because the number of applicants they're getting are in the tens of thousands.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions from anybody else?
What's the number one thing that somebody just graduating from boot camp that you would say the number one thing to kind of stand out if we focused on?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I see is like you have to be able to get my attention. So it goes back to marketability. It's like get that person's attention by demonstrating a project that you've worked on. So this is kind of a two-part answer. That first is I get the attention, but getting attention for me is really showing a project that you've worked on and you've worked on it really deeply. And what is the problem? How did you solve it? What did you do with it? So it could be a project that you've worked at the coding school. It could be your own personal project. I've taken actually a lot of interviews and meetings with people that wrote me one line that said, "Hey, I'm working on this project. The complexity is this. I'm trying to solve this, and I'm not sure if that is a problem that you're thinking about." But sometimes they'll do the research to say, like, "Are you thinking about this growth hack or whatever the case may be?" And it just piques my interest because I'm like, wow, that person's thinking about the problem from a business standpoint, not from an academic standpoint, right? Like they're thinking about like, how do I get more users onto the platform, or how do I get, how do I build this solution with the least amount of code, lines of code, or whatever the case may be. So I would say try to highlight that as much as possible because I think that would make you stand out. Everybody typically would write a very cookie cutter formal email, and I'll tell you right now that never works. So I don't know who started that, but like I'm here to tell you guys, do not write that. Nobody looks at it. So when you write these formal, like Dear Dave, with this like 3 paragraphs, it never works. If you write it short and casual, that's exactly how I communicate. That's exactly how most founders and most entrepreneurs and most leaders communicate. We're too busy. Like we need to be able to look at these things and go, yeah, sure. Here's my Calendly link. Let's connect. And I allocate like 15 minutes for coffee time chat. So that's just any interesting people that reach out in a week. I have an X amount of slot. I give those people to have a conversation with. If you write long messages, even if you're an amazing person, I'm just not going to read it ever.
Cool. Thank you. What about like building your own website to promote your brand? So I think that'd be a good idea.
That I did not mention, but that's huge. So like if you guys can if people do that, I think that's so underrated. It's almost like I don't even need to have your resume. If you can create a website with demonstrating like a project and like who you are in a very interesting way, or a video by yourself or what you've worked on or something like that, I'll take that 9 out of 10 times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It takes time, but it builds your brand. It goes back to what I was saying about building brand.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Dave, I have a question.
Yeah.
All right. So I am seasoned. Let's say I'm in my mid 50s, and I was laid off because of, like you said before, the economy. And so on my resume, I've had it, I've been working on it, I've got it updated per se. But now it's like I did not go to like a traditional college. I live in a very small town in North Carolina, so it was just like a community college, and
Yep.
it wasn't even called a community college back then. It was just like a technical college. So I don't have all these degrees and all these things like that. I don't know. Is that would that be a problem? Because but I've had jobs where I've been like office managers, I've been an office administrator, I've been working in the nuclear field. So my thing is, I was thinking about maybe taking the education part off because my my thing was in secretarial science, and I mean I'm an office administrator. So maybe I was thinking maybe I should take it off because maybe that's hindering me. What do you think about that? Or should I ask your GPT thing?
So I have a lot of thoughts on that. Let's see how much time we have. But like, I got my MBA. I think it was the biggest waste of time and money I've ever done ever. Like, I honestly think it's like, um, I literally in the last 10 years, including my team, never, I don't think once looked at a person and said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna hire that person because they went to this school." Zero times. Like, I have tens of thousands of applicants. You kind of scan at it and you go, "Okay, kind of interesting from a network standpoint, right?" Like if it's a fresh out of school grad, there's nothing else to showcase except for schooling, right? And so you kind of lean in with that. But as you get further away into the workforce, I care less and less about the education. Again, I was saying the education becomes so irrelevant because it's so long ago. And you think about when you learn in school, let's say 10 years ago, well, that's even more dated. That's probably 20 years worth of like dated knowledge because school is probably teaching you things that were 10 years even older than that. And by the time you graduated and now you're where you're at, I don't really care. I've hired people with that were dropouts, no school, and they're actually stars in my company or they're stars in another company. And I had a dropout that is now VP level. He was just an executor. He could communicate really, really well. He was passionate about the problem. Did I care that he didn't go to a big school? Not really. Like, he's one of the best performers on my team, and I gave him a shot. I think it depends on where you apply. If you're applying to certain places like finance, legal, places that are more stuffy and puts a little bit more weight in this type of stuff, then yeah, I think that's harder to get away. But I would say in tech and in more progressive places, nobody cares.
You are so amazing. Thank you for that encouragement, Dave. I'm like I say, I'm out there and I'm looking, and it's only been laid out. I just really started about maybe 2 weeks ago. So, but yeah, I've got over 20 years of administrative experience, and so I was just wondering if that would be a hindrance. But thanks for the help. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Leslie, I would give you advice. Highlight those 20 years of experience. Like, talk about your experience and what you've learned and lead with that. Like, I think any emails or LinkedIn messages you reach out to any hiring managers or companies that you want to target, lead with that and be confident about it, right? And talk about what problem that you've seen and say, yeah, in my 20 years, like one of the biggest problems I've seen is this. Are you facing this? Like, if you even did that as a line and I read that and it came across my desk, I'd be like, at least make me think about it. And if you catch me in the right time and it is a problem that that I have, then it's a kind of a, like I said, it's no brainer. I'm gonna give you an interview. I'll skip the other steps and I'll give you an interview for sure.
I appreciate it, Dave.
No problem. I think there's a question. Yara said, so less than 2 paragraphs. This goes back to before. Not even a paragraph. I would say probably like 3-4 lines. Like, the problem a lot of people have is they want to jam all information into the first message. It's kind of like, imagine you're dating and you're telling everything about yourself in the first meeting. Does that scare that person? Probably, right? Like, it's like, why are you telling me everything about yourself right off the bat? You kind of want to drip information out, and that makes it more interesting. You lead with your best information, but don't write it too long. Somebody said, so you are saying that education is not something that you see in a person. So what are you looking for? I think I mentioned that already. It's just not, education is not the main thing, especially if you have experience, right? Like, why would I care about your in-class theoretical education when you have, let's say you want to highlight a real world experience? I'll tell you right now, what you learn in the classroom versus what you do in the real world is very different. Like everything that I learned, I never once applied in as an entrepreneur right now. There's so much complexity and things that I'm like, my MBA class is thrown out the window, right? So that's what I mean by that. Ivan asked, as a hiring manager, what is the top quality you look for in an applicant? I think I had a slide, I mentioned that, communication, adaptability, the ability to want to learn, and then problem solving is probably the main four. Maria says, how about this? I am originally from Russia, moved to the US, literally have gold medal from high school, university diploma with honors. And as per Google, it is a symbol of excellence of academic prowess, but not related to tech. Will it catch your eye as an employer, and why? That's a good question. It depends on how you frame it. If you frame it as in it was something that it took me a long time to accomplish, so it shows discipline, and then I would be curious to understand what it took, then it's something of interest I would bring up in an interview, in a conversation. But again, I always say, like, relate these things back to the real world of business and what's happening in the real world. A lot of times people like want to highlight certain things, and I'm like, that's great for a conversation starter, but like, how does that relate to this job and like the problems I have as a manager or company, and how are you coming in today to contribute? I think that's one thing that people don't think about or frame it enough, is like, you have to put yourselves in the hiring manager's shoes. You want to, when they're looking to hire somebody, they're looking for two things. The first one is they're looking to bring somebody in to alleviate some problem that they have, right? They have some sort of problem. They need some more manpower to alleviate that. So like, if you understand that, then you will understand how to have that conversation in an interview or in your reach out and things like that. The other one is how you can contribute to not only solve the problem, but now take that to the next level. So I think if you have those two things in mind, then you're gonna have a much deeper conversation within your interview with the hiring manager, instead of a one-way conversation where you're just dumping information about yourself, which is nice. But I've been in those. I just sit back for 30 minutes to listen, and I say, "Thank you, but I'll get back to you." I hope that helps.
I have another question.
Yeah, go for it, Scott.
May seem weird, but I'm wondering what problems are you and your company trying to solve right now?
Great question. I've done about 25 of these presentations, and you're the first one to actually ask that question. And I always was waiting in the back of my mind, being like, is somebody going to ask that? There's many problems in a startup. There's always fires, but the biggest one that we're facing right now, that I would pay hand over fist if I can find that person to come in and alleviate this, is how do we acquire customers in a funnel in a faster way? So this has nothing to do with tech, but like, from a strategy standpoint, we can figure out how to get more people into the funnel without the traditional, like, cost of ads and things like that. One, if you can solve that, I think you're marketable of any company, no matter what, right? And then two, if you could solve that and then create some sort of technology around that to speed that up, then I think you might have $1 billion business. And like, myself and a couple of founders talk about that all the time. It's like, if somebody can come in and actually figure that out, I think it's huge. Yeah. And the funnel thing is something you'll see in every company. Every company has a funnel. Every company has a challenge of figuring out how to bring those people through the funnel. And everything you do is you're trying to sell into the funnel and make that process easier and create a better experience for the user as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I'm around, so appreciate the team at 4Geeks for organizing this. If you guys have any questions, you can shoot to them, they can shoot to me, or I'll give you my email out so people can reach out, or find me on LinkedIn, follow us on our social media, like, comment, share, tell people about this. Feel free to use it. It's free to use. It gets capped off from a usage standpoint because there is a lot of computing power that we have to like use. If it gets to a certain level and you really, really love this, message me directly on LinkedIn or email. I'll give you a special discount code that gives you free for a month to use unlimited for a period of time. And really hope that you guys increase your chances of finding the next job.
If I could just add on at the end here, I just want to make a point that if somebody in this meeting could demonstrate the ability to solve the problem that Dave just outlined, he would be compelled to hire you. That simply. So imagine if there's one thing you could do that would be maximally effective is demonstrate that you can do the thing they're hiring you to do. It's like if you can find a way to approximately like find out what they want from you and then demonstrate that via any mechanism, right? Like publish a YouTube video demonstrating that ability as an example, right? I can't imagine a better way to go about it. Like who wants to read some like you said, this long email that's kind of vague and kind of useless to the recruiter? Send them a video with like, hey, video demonstrating capability, period, send. Like, wow.
That's a really good point, Isaiah. I think I've touched on it a little bit, but I'll just push on your point a little bit more. Is that from an anecdotal standpoint, I had an individual when I was putting out the founding designer role for a company. Right, that's a big role for us. That person is gonna own all of design for us from the beginning. I had 700 applicants, and we're a small brand, of course, but the quality was really high. And I had a couple people create a Loom video and walk me through their design, very short, like a couple minutes. Walk me through the design, talked out loud, and I was like, I'm giving them the interview. I gotta talk to this person. Like the fact that they spend the time made my life a lot easier because I literally watched that video and I was eating breakfast and I was like, yeah, you know what? I understand them a little bit more. I see what their portfolio, what they're building, and they shared it. I'm assuming that person just didn't share it just with me. They probably did a few for others as well. So, really good point, Isaiah, because I think that does make you stand out, at least for me. So, and sometimes even if you do all these things, the hiring manager might say no, and that's honestly because we're constrained by budget and things like that. But I'll still keep in touch and you never know as things grow. Like things can change. Yeah, so check us out, ribbon.ai, and find me on LinkedIn. And I hope this was informative for people. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, best of luck in your search.
Thank you, Dave.
No problem. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.